This is pretty interesting. This comes out of sort of an update on the whistleblower situation, where we've seen the abuse of whistleblowers, and we'll get into it a lot more with Tristan coming up, being treated unfairly and a lot of times based on their political beliefs or even just their political thoughts.
We see here that the FBI had an agent who honorably served for 12 years, received cash awards from the FBI and positive performance evaluations. And then in March of 2022, the FBI Executive Assistant Director Jennifer Lee Moore suspended our client's security clearance. And as they looked into this, they also found that there were memos and interview forms that were asked of colleagues of this individual that asked things like, did the agent vocalize support for President Trump? Did they vocalize objection to the COVID-19 vaccine? Now, mind you, this is March of 2022. This is after the vaccine had been out for over a year and a half. This wasn't as if initially this was something that they were concerned about. This is even after the Supreme Court struck down a vaccine mandate. So the fact that they are keying in on views that are deemed controversial, like the supporting of a president or thoughts about a very hot button issue, they go after something that is completely irrelevant to that, and that is his security clearance.
This is from Just the News. They put in a shocking litmus test. FBI security inquiry tried to unmask employees' support for President Trump. They again, going through to decide whether you get security clearance based upon your support or non-support of a political candidate. If this was Joe Biden, I'd feel the exact same way. If this was, more liberal causes, you'd feel the same way. This should not be how we are judging people based on their political preferences, whether they're going to get security clearance when they're working for the FBI. Hopefully, we are above that and beyond that. And also, we know you do not lose these kind of things just purely based on, you don't lose your free speech because you work for the FBI.
And they're not supposed to be using security clearance as a punishment, or if that is something that they can try to guide or use as a carrot and a stick to get someone to do what the FBI wants to do. And then, as we've seen time and time again, when they believe that this process has been used improperly, and then they maybe go through appropriate whistleblower channels, you see retaliation by the agency.
The most recent letter to the Inspector General is about someone who's not been public. He is someone who, unlike all those other FBI employees who had no actual connection to January 6th, he is somebody that went down to the Capitol to hear President Trump speak on January 6th. When President Trump said to go to the Capitol, he went down to the Capitol building. He stayed outside. He didn't engage in any violence. He didn't go inside. He didn't break any laws. About a year later, I should add, he self-reported at that time that he had been there, but again, indicated he had not done anything wrong, and it wasn't an issue with his supervisors or security officer. A year later, he came under suspicion within the security division of the FBI. There was a referral to them, and so they started an investigation of whether he had broken any laws. In the course of that, what we've now become aware of is that after suspending his security clearance, they interviewed a number of his colleagues. These were compelled interviews. These were interviews that his coworkers had to answer. They were told that if they didn't answer truthfully and completely, their own security clearances could be subject to suspension or revocation. And they also asked about the context of their interactions with this individual who has, again, chosen to remain anonymous to this point. They asked if they'd ever socialized with him, even outside of work. So with that background, these people being forced to rat out whatever the security division wants to ask about their coworkers, they didn't ask them specific things about January 6th. They asked them, have you ever heard him vocalize support for President Trump? Have you ever heard him vocalize objection to the COVID-19 vaccine? These were completely inappropriate questions for the FBI to be asking about any of its employees.
What does it tell you about the nature of the questions they were asking during a security clearance review about what's going on at the FBI?
What we've been hearing, and we expect that there will be other whistleblowers on this in the future, is that the security division, once anyone came within the funnel of suspicion, that's when they just went completely overboard in asking about all kinds of conservative views, and then use that as a reason for drumming them out of the agency. And so it really does look like there was a purge of a number of conservative employees just based on some of these things that were not appropriate for the security division to be looking at. So this is really a problem for the entire security division. And of course, it raises questions about how high up within the FBI they knew about this activity. The Weaponization Committee has interviewed Jennifer Lee Moore, who was an assistant director, executive assistant director over the security clearance division and other HR. And of course, she was very close with FBI leadership. So what I think we're going to see is a big focus on, did the FBI leadership know that this kind of witch hunting was going on? And if so, that's extremely problematic.
So right now, you've sent a letter to the DOJ Inspector General Michael Horowitz. You've gone over a little bit what you're going to lay out for him. Not only what did you lay out, but what do you hope actually comes from this? I think that's what a lot of people's concerns are when they hear about this, when they know that you have found this information or worked with these whistleblowers, but now they go, but now what? Because they see the corruption happening. They see the rooting out of conservatives in these organizations and in these departments. So I guess, what do you hope comes from this letter?
I expect there will be, like I said, a widespread investigation by the Inspector General. They have access to all of this. Security clearance process is not one that typically gets a lot of oversight. In some ways, it's subjective, right? And it's really left up to individual agencies, even though they're supposed to use broad guidelines that are put out in executive order and administered by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. But so for the IG to do this deep dive here, I think will be critical. I think Congress needs to hold the IG's feet to the fire to make sure that they do this thoroughly and completely. Congress needs to additionally do its own oversight. That's the big picture of the investigating. From there, I think it really depends on what they find. Again, if this was a widespread problem, then there are definitely staffing changes and other things. People need to be held accountable for this kind of inappropriate behavior. It may be that there are structural problems with their security clearance process, which we've already highlighted just in a whistleblower context, but this extends even beyond the whistleblower context. Even if someone wasn't a whistleblower, it's not appropriate to ask questions like this in a security clearance context. So I think there are a lot of reforms that need to happen. There will be staffing changes that need to happen, and potentially legal changes as well. I've, of course, advocated legislative changes to try and strengthen FBI whistleblower protections. We've talked about how the Supreme Court case in Navy versus Egan really impedes any outside review of security clearance cases. Otherwise, it would be the Merit Systems Protection Board that I sat on as a member until about a year and some change ago that would be an outside look at these. So someone could say, this was unfair how I was treated in a security clearance case. So those are all things that can happen.
You mentioned the IG letter and hoping that an investigation comes out of that. But as you see things where there's potential First Amendment claims or things of that nature that could also be looked at here, do you anticipate any legal action will be needed to take on behalf of the client as well?
For now, the quickest route to move forward is working with the Inspector General. And that was very effective for us with Marcus Allen. And so that is the step that we're going to focus on. Beyond that, all options are open, but we'll see what makes the most sense to help our client.